back for Harfield. What a volley! Scott Harfield! He's been threatening that recently. And all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end. Oh, what a goal! What a goal from Robbie Blake! Burnley's first goal in the Premier League is something very, very special.
Wade Elliott has that change of pace and he's got away from Montgomery. It's the path of McCann and the follow-up finds the net. What a strike from Wade Elliott! A bolt from the Claret and Blue.
Oh goodness me! What a goal from Patterson! If that is to be the one that takes them to Wembley, you cannot argue with that. Pure quality.
Here goes Mike Conroy. Still time for a winner, maybe. John Francis! They came to York in their thousands. They're going home as champions.
I mean, if there's any justice in the world, Burnley would surely score from this corner. Swung right in there. Ball in there. Yeah! Michael Kennan! Oh, that's justice! That is justice at the Amex Stadium. Burnley are level and deserve to be.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the latest episode of the Turfcast podcast pre-game show with me, Joe Redmond, ahead of this weekend's clash against Huddersfield Town. And after some games against three of the top six in Watford, Lowton and of course Millwall, this may offer a little bit of respite. But there's no easy games at any level, and I'm pretty sure Warnock will do everything he can to turn this game into an absolute slog. As I was just saying off air to the Huddersfield fan that we have waiting, if we were playing Huddersfield with Mark Fotheringham, I'd be expecting a comfortable win. But with Warnock, they are a different animal. And of course, I didn't check this before I went live. I probably should have done. I think they won their last game against Birmingham. I'll check with Johnny when I bring him in a second. So he's obviously had a decent start at Warnock. If that is the case. But yes, of course, off the back of a very good point down at Millwall, a lot of people maybe a little bit disappointed that we didn't get the win. Of course, it was a late goal, but a point down at Millwall, I think, is a very good result and one we can all be proud of, especially the fact that we're the better side for 95% of the game and had 70% possession. Could have easily been 2-3-0. Obviously, Brownhill hit the post. Twine had a few chances in the first half. So I've not any issues with it. We've played Watford and Lowton and Millwall in the space of a week, or what was a week, and we got, 5 points, obviously draw at home to Watford, beat Lowton down at Lowton, and then getting a draw with Millwall. So still unbeaten. That's 13 games unbeaten now. I'm not really sure what much more we can ask for of the lads, really. 13 unbeaten, had won 10 in a row. Steaming away with the league. 12 points clear now, I think it is off the top of my head. Again, I haven't checked it. 16 points clear of third. Again, some of the negativity I felt was a little bit much, but I just think that's the Burnley mentality coming out. And another thing as well, this thing with Scott Twine, there's been a lot of people criticising the theatrics. I think if we take us sort of like offended hats off, everybody wants to be offended straight away. If you look at the fact that his boot got split by the challenge, yes, it is a good challenge and he wins the ball, does the lad. And I do feel like Twine does go down a little bit much. But you've got to remember, so it does too much when he's down. But you've got to remember, this lad has just been out injured for 6 months. He's obviously worried that the fact there's been a big impact that he's going to be out injured again for a long time. I think that's what it were personally. I'm not going to sit here criticising him. Yes, it was a little bit much. And a lot of Burnley fans were like, that's not the Burnley way. And I do agree with that. But when you look at the fact that his boot got split by the challenge, it was obviously a tough impact. I just think he's gone on the floor, shit himself, thought, oh no, big impact, I'm injured. Then he's realised that actually I'm not that bad. Hopefully as he gets a little bit older and he gets some more games under his belt at this level, and of course the Premier League next season, then yeah, he'll hopefully get more confident. Team news, Bayer's back, which is good. Vincent Kompany said, I think I said Sean Dyche then. Vincent Kompany said in his press conference today that Bayer will be back for this game, which is obviously good. Like, don't knock it. I think that Ekdal and Amin were both brilliant against Millwall, but I do think Bayer is head and shoulders above, both of them really. I think he's the better defender. Well, head and shoulders is a bit much, but I think he's the better defender of the three. Personally, I would have Ekdal and Bayer starting against Huddersfield. But speaking of Huddersfield, we have got a Huddersfield fan waiting in the wings. It's Johnny, and he's from He Takes That Chance. I'll bring him in now. There he is. How you doing, buddy? All right?
Yeah, not so bad, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you. Really good. Now, Warnock, he's had a decent start, and I was right there in thinking he'd won your last match against Birmingham.
Yeah, 2-1. So that was officially his first game. He was in for the game previously, but he was in New York in a jazz club that night, so he wasn't available. So yeah, Birmingham was his first game in the dugout.
Interesting. That just sums Warnock up completely, doesn't it? Like, yes, I'll sign the contract, but I've got a gig at a jazz club over in New York, so let me get home first. But are you impressed with the start? Obviously, I know it's only one game, but it's a game you probably wouldn't have won under Fotheringham, just based on simply the fact that you didn't win many games under Fotheringham.
It's a very valid point. I think it was very kind of Warnock. I think when we went one down, I think there was a bit of build up, a bit of hype around Warnock. We go one down in the first quarter of the game, and then start to sink. The fact we've managed to bring it back and score 2 goals. The fact we brought it back first and foremost, something we very rarely ever done all season, and two decent goals. But it was very direct, not in a long ball way, but direct, quick, pass it forward, break, counter, the kind of typical Warnock performance you'd normally get out of it. A little bit sure at the back as well, which is what we've lacked under Fotheringham. So I think the amount of time he's had, it's all about 3 points for us. But yeah, there is an instant impact. And now he's had a full week on the training field. Probably not the greatest game to test that against Burnley, given what you're doing. But hopefully we'll just see a little bit more of the Warnock way, which is, direct, but showed up at the back and hopefully getting points. Yeah,
it does sound typical Warnock, doesn't it? You mentioned there you came back and you won, and that's not something you probably would have expected previously. Is that just shows the sort of like characteristics that Warnock bring in, and it's going to say that the squad is now sort of like got a good character within the squad? Do you think that's something that he's going to bring with him?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's often when a manager leaves, there's a bit of a bad attitude. I mean, like he might have lost the dressing room or players haven't been trying. I don't think we ever really saw that under Fotheringham. I think it was just players are probably a bit disillusioned with what necessarily they've been asked to do, or the fact they're disillusioned with the fact we were in such a bad run and morale was down. When we said in our podcast, what do we want from our next manager? And I don't think, given the fact this is our third manager this season, we've got opportunities to kind of have someone who's got a different way of playing and trying to instill a new level of tactics at this stage. We purely need someone who's going to take the pressure off the squad, get the nervousness out of them, and make them have a bit of fun with these games that we've got and try and get what we can. I don't think you could get better than Warnock, and I think that is what we saw when we went one down. I think under Fotheringham, nothing to do with him, but under Fotheringham, we would never have come back from that game because it's one down, heads down, that's it, we've lost another game. But I think Warnock probably gave a little bit more of a spark to actually be able to turn that round. So probably the best way to get the 3 points, really, because we now know if we do go down, we can win and we can come away with 3 points.
Yeah, interesting. What's the difference then? I know it's only one game, but again, you managed to get the win and you saw quite a few games under the old management. What's the difference then between a setup under Warnock and a setup under Fotheringham?
How long have you got? Organisation. I think getting players to do what they can do and what they're good at, recognising that is key. With Warnock's still not blessed with a fantastic squad, but I do think the squad has got enough in it, would have had enough in it from the start of the season to not be where we are. I think we've just lacked that bit of experience as well. And I think, like I said, just taking the pressure off. We've got players who are good players who were part of the team that finished third last year. And they've just lost the ability to play football. They're making stupid decisions, making mistakes, looking under pressure. And I think that's a lot. It's a lot of football's a lot to do with mentality. Like Burnley are winning every week and you get used to winning. We were losing every week, you get used to losing. And I think Warnock will try and be able to make that change and give players who have got the quality a little bit of confidence back, a little bit of comfort, and just try and kind of get that little bit extra out of them, which they do have.
I'm glad you mentioned last season because I do want to ask you about that. Like, not necessarily your season last season, but why do you think you were so close to the Premier League last season and, in my opinion, robbed? Like VAR should have stopped. Was it penalty? I can't remember what it was. There were 2 incidents where you were robbed, and I remember even myself being irate about it, and I had no horse in that race at all. But you did so well last season, and then this season you're doing so badly. Like, why is there such a juxtaposition between the 2 seasons?
Yeah, there's quite a few things, to be honest. And I guess being inside, being my club, being our club, you kind of see a lot more than you probably get come through the media and third party. But there's a few things. First of all, we lost a few key players. So we lost O'Brien and Toffolo to Forest, which hurt a little bit more because it was Forest.
Yeah.
We lost Levi Cole at the back, who's now at Brighton, who's a Chelsea loanee, who's quite pivotal in that back 3/5. There's been a bit of a drop off of players as well in regards to like Lees last year. Tom Lees was absolutely exceptional. Not quite been at the same level this year. So there's that first and foremost, which kind of was straight away players leaving, loans expiring, players being sold. Corberan left with about 3 weeks before the start of the season. So we started pre-season. We obviously had a plan, and Corberan kind of left with 3 weeks to go, which forced the club to kind of make a decision in appointing Danny Schofield, which was probably earlier than they were planning on doing that. So that's massive effect on pre-season. A lot of work's just gone out the door there.
Yeah.
And injuries has been something that's really hit us all year. And I know a lot of people say, yeah, over the season, most clubs suffer from injuries, but we lost the spine of our team. We lost Pearson from the very start of the season, from a pre-season game against Bolton. Hoggy at the start of the season was struggling. We've had Danny Ward be out for most of the season. We've lost Nichols now, who was player of the season last year. In the EFL team of the year last year. So he's gone as the keeper. So we've lost key players in key areas. Andrin was a player Tino Andrin that was great. We saw quite a bit of quality from him last season. He's barely featured in the first half of the season, and he's now out for the season now once he came back from an ankle injury. So we've really suffered with key players in key areas of the pitch, and we've struggled to kind of get our best team out there. So that's not helped either. And then aside from that, we've had issues off the field. So ownership struggles, trying to sell the club, lack of investment because they're trying to sell the club. So you kind of got the four main pillars of a successful football club: good management in the boardroom and on the field, good quality squad, and trying to avoid injuries. And all four of those areas we've suffered with, and that's why we are where we are.
I guess when you put it like that, it's completely understandable. Just from the outside looking in, when you don't understand everything that's gone on, I'm just like, why are they so bad this season compared to last season? But again, I didn't pay too much attention to the Championship last season for obvious reasons. You mentioned injuries there. Is there any big injuries that you've got coming up into this game that we should know about?
Yeah, so we've Turton was a key part of defence, and he kind of came back and played for a couple of games, looked to shore it up a little bit. His season's over. Nichols has been out obviously for a few weeks now. Our keeper was quite a big miss. We kind of had a few players come back we were expecting under Warnock. Danny Ward and Mikel, who's a striker obviously, and Mikel Hellick, our centre back. And Warnock is apparently a massive fan of Wardy and rung him and said, "Are you fit?" And Wardy said, "Yeah." And he said, "Right, are you playing then?" So that's something that might not have happened on the following. I think the medical staff weren't probably too keen on that. But I think at the moment, Nichols is probably our biggest miss. We've got a young lad, Blokovic, who actually made his debut against Burnley last year in the Cup, who's debutising for him. But that's quite a big miss for us at the moment. But hopefully, Hellick got through, and hopefully Ward can play, because they are quite pivotal. Certainly in the back, with we've got suspensions and injuries in the back line, and Ward's quite key to how we play going forward. So hopefully they'll be fit.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about some of Warnock's comments. I think he's made them today or in a press conference or something. I haven't got them to hand, so I'm paraphrasing a little, and apologies to anybody listening. Any Huddersfield fans if I get this wrong. It's not slander if I do get it wrong. I just can't remember. But he said something. He's got a couple of players who may or may not be coming back, and he has basically said something along the lines of, "I'm not going to risk them at Burnley, because with all due respect, we're not going to stay up by winning a game against Burnley. If we're playing a team like Coventry or somebody else, then yeah, I would risk them, but we're not going to risk these players against Burnley." Now, as much as I could understand this point of view from being in the Premier League for so long, say like if we were playing, and I'd admit, take this with a pinch of salt, please. I'm not in any way, shape or form comparing us with Man City, but say, for example, if we were playing Man City away, who were top of the league, and we had one of our players on the edge of coming back, and then maybe the week after we were playing Brighton, for example, I think, just save it for Brighton. We'll probably get dicked up at Man City. So I could understand that point of view, but you not think it's a little bit negative at the same time as well? Them sort of comments?
Yeah, potentially. Do you know what? He's kind of talked about the Burnley game quite a bit. He mentioned it I'm sure I mentioned it in his first press conference. Not that specifically, but on the lines of, we've got Birmingham, then we go to Burnley, and like, isn't that's going to be fun, isn't it? Kind of almost writing off. Now, I don't know if he's doing that as a bit of a media spin to try and take the pressure off. He's mentioned it being a free hit quite a few times as well. So whether he's thinking getting the mentality that the freedom the players are going to play without any pressure. I don't know. He's a clever man, Warnock, and sometimes what he's saying isn't necessarily what he's meaning, or what he's not necessarily getting. There's another level underneath what he's saying, trying to get something out of it. Personally, if that is his mindset, I guess managers will have games that they target for 3 points and games that they target for a point, and games they think, well, if we get anything out of that, fantastic. There might be a little bit of that because if we have got a thin squad and we've got players who are playing with a knock, you might think, well, give them the week off and target the games. But on the other side of that, we've not got a lot of games left, and we need every point we can get. We've not got a luxury of trying to skip games or throw games and focus on other ones. So, yeah, well, I think we'll have to see. I think when the lineup comes out at 2:00 on Saturday, it might surprise us. You might see a little bit of gamesmanship, or you might genuinely be thinking there's nothing to get from out of this game. We'll target something else. But I think it's dangerous, given where we are, how many points we're behind, how many games are left, to completely write off a game. I mean, as a betting man, I'd be backing Burnley all day long. But like we said before we started, it would be fantastic for the press, wouldn't it? And Sky Sports and talks about everything if like Warnock goes and does something on Saturday. And it'd be kind of a little bit Warnock to do that. Someone compared it to what Dyche did with Everton against Arsenal, a little bit like that. So I don't know. Under Fotheringham, no chance. Under Warnock, you never quite know. You can get under the skin of a team, and given how Burnley like to play, if we try and stifle them, there might be something there. So to completely write it off, I think would be a little bit naive. But if that is what he's doing, look, not to second guess him, not to kind of say he's wrong, but I can potentially see maybe why he might be doing that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said he's a clever man. I think, and there's a lot more to it than him probably just writing it off. Even it is a mentality thing to get into the players' heads to sort of like give them the the confidence to be able to do it, or the relaxation that it doesn't necessarily matter if you lose 3-0. I'm not going to be that arsed. As long as we can follow it up with some decent results in the next games. I want to talk to you about Matthew Lowton, because obviously former Burnley man. Still technically a Burnley man, I think. And then obviously on loan at you guys. How's he doing? Because a lot of Burnley fans hold him in quite high regard, especially if Burnley fans have sort of like, say my generation, because he's been here for quite a while, but sort of like Burnley fans that are my sort of age hold him in high regard. It was a big part of the success we had for the last 9 years under Dyche, really. So how's he getting on at Huddersfield?
Yeah, there was quite a bit of excitement from coming in, really, personally, from me. Like I said, I'm one of my best mates is a Burnley fan, and when we were linked with him, he kind of said, well, really, you're probably not too far away from our team in level of quality. It's just the way Burnley like to play, how they use the fullbacks. Yeah. So it was quite high expectation of coming in. Obviously, I've known him being at Burnley and Sheffield United previously, so Town fans have known of him quite a while. So I think he was saying, okay, that this looks a relatively good pickup. But I wouldn't necessarily say he struggled. I think you've got to give him a little bit of grace, the fact that he's not played football for 6 months or so, certainly first team level. And I think that showed a little bit. I think he looked a little bit rusty. There was moments of you can see, oh yeah, he's a little bit of quality, but equally, he has, unfortunately for him, some of his mistakes have directly led to goals recently. I think that kind of highlights it a little bit more. But yeah, I think he's relatively solid. He also suffered slightly because we really needed a left back when we signed a right back. So I think it's not Lowton's fault, but he wasn't a left back, so he kind of got a little bit of heat for that as well. Like I said, not necessarily his fault, but I think he's done probably, I'd say, 6 out of 10 so far. Probably not as well as we might have hoped. But again, he's come into a difficult environment. He strikes me as a Warnock player. He strikes me as someone that Warnock will like and get along with. So whether we see a bit more of him now going forward and a bit more of the player we probably expect him, we get him maybe. Like I say, he's been asked to play centre-back. He's been asked to play left-back, neither of which are his positions. So I think you've got to give him a bit of credit with that as well, and also coming back into first-team football week in, week out, which he's not done in the first half of the season as well. So I think he's done okay. But yeah, some Town fans might disagree with that.
Yeah, I've got a lot of time for Matt. He's actually been on the podcast as well during COVID, so I've got a lot of time for Matt. I wish him nothing but the best. Can he play this weekend? I presume he can't.
No, I don't think he'll play. No, I'm sure he's.
That'll be a shame.
A few Town fans were a little bit naughty and said actually they should have reversed it and made him to play. Might have benefited you better, but I think that's a bit. Yeah. I think that's a bit harsh. But yeah, no, I presume he can't.
Yeah, I would presume that as well. Looking ahead to the game, then obviously we were saying off air, and you kind of just followed it up in one of your previous answers. If we were playing a Huddersfield Town team under Mark Fotheringham, I would be pretty confident in a win. But Neil Warnock and Burnley go back a long way as well. So there's the fact that, as you've just mentioned, he's got this. He will stifle the game. That's exactly what a Warnock team will do. I've got no problems with it. Burnley did it for 6 years in the Prem. We can't really complain now if teams start doing it to us. But I expect you to be well organised. I expect you to slow the game down at every opportunity. I expect you to do everything you can to stop us legally. But as I'm saying as well, Warnock gets under Burnley fans' skins. Not so much recently, but from back in the days of Stan Turner and Neil Warnock. I don't know if you remember, obviously, with you having a best friend who's a Burnley fan. They used to get under each other's skin. They'd fall out quite a lot. So I think Warnock would love to get something against Burnley. But what sort of game are you expecting? I know you mentioned earlier you said you're quite direct. You yourself have said you will try and stifle it and slow the game down. So is that what you're expecting you to do?
Yeah, I expect so. I think, like it says, as you all know from success in the Prem, I think we try and, if we try to go toe to toe, it's not the way we play. We try to go toe to toe with Burnley. We will come off second best. So you've got to look at a different way of getting the points. We're away from home, so we'll probably naturally be a bit tighter anyway. Look to take our chances. Probably look to try and counter if we can do and keep it tight. But at the same time, frustrate Burnley. I mean, I know Burnley like to have a lot of possession anyway, just from the way you play. We'll probably happily give you it. I think a lot of Town fans will take a point straight away before kickoff. So whether we try and hold out for that and try and stick 0-0 and counter, I'm not sure. Fotheringham used to do that a lot. We've got a point, so we'll try and do absolutely nothing in the game and hope we come away with it. I think we'll probably do a little bit more than that, hopefully. With Warnock, we do have a couple of players who, can hurt Burnley. Heard you saying in your preview before I came on about Bayer being back. That was a bit of a disappointment because I was hoping. I said second-rate centre backs, but they probably still walk into our team. Yeah. Gives us a bit of a chance, but yeah, I think you'll try and be clever. Try and wind players up. Hoggy will probably be in the ref's ear and winding players up, but I mean, Barnes will be doing the same to us, so no doubt that'll even itself out. But yeah, I think what way we've got to do is try and stay tight, take a chance when they come. We've got people who can hurt from set pieces, and we've got a little bit of pace in Humbo as well, and just try and see what we can do. But I think everyone there on Saturday would happily take a point.
Yep, fair enough. You mentioned there you have got some players that can hurt us. That's always one of my questions. What are the players that we should be looking out for on your team that can hurt us?
I think Humbo is a good player. So he was on loan from Watford. Played a bit in the first half of the season for them. He's come over to us on loan. Strong, pacey, scored a great goal against Birmingham. So he'd want to pick out. We've just brought up a fullback called Headley, who's a young lad. Again, he scored against Birmingham. He's got a bit of pace. Slightly questionable at the back, but does enjoy going forward. And then if he's on his day, Knockout can always got that bit of quality to play a pass or or score a goal. So he's one as well. And hopefully, if Ward's fit, he's quite crucial to where we play into Ward's feet and move off him. So there are a few players I'll probably pick out to watch that might be able to take the game to Burnley and hopefully help us get something out of it.
Yeah, this is a question I always like to ask opposition fans. What are your thoughts on Burnley and what they've done this season? I know we've mentioned it a couple of times. Obviously, you probably have kept a bit of a close eye on Burnley with one of your best friends, your best friend being a Burnley fan. What are your thoughts on what we've done? Because I know people who listen to the podcast, a lot will be sick of me repeating this side of it, but we've completely changed everything about the side from last season to this season, changed the manager, changed the style of play, changed the entire ethos. We are just completely different, changed pretty much the entire playing staff apart from a few. So what are your thoughts on what we've done and what we're achieving this season?
Well, you played his first game of season. And when Company was hired, I personally thought that was a poor decision because I think Burnley they were clearly going to do a rebuild. They're clearly going to lose a lot of players. And it was I know they've not done like 10, 15 years in the Premier League, but they've been in the Premier League for quite a while. And it was going to be a culture shock. I didn't think Company was the right person to come and rebuild the team and deal with that. Been proved completely wrong. I knew I was wrong 10 minutes into that first game of the first season because I was astounded by the way Burnley had played football and the way Company got that complete culture change across. And I know he was doing it with new players and not the old players, but still to get the amount of players he got in I think you needed a who's who in that first game to work out even who was on your team. But to get them playing such quick, clean, and aggressive football in that short period of time, and then you're thinking, well, can it last? Can it stick? Will they blow out? Not happened, and it's just gone from strength to strength. So I think it's an exceptional example of how to do it when you come down from the Prem. A lot of people who probably don't know Burnley as close as you do, or potentially I do, look at one point to the parachute payments and point to money. Again, completely dispel that myth. The amount of money that went out of the door by way of selling players more than funded what came in the door. And again, some of the pickups that you've done, 1, 2, 3, 4 million, not mega bucks. It's just knowing who, what fits, what company wants to do, and what you can get out of them. So I think it's a textbook way to do it, and I think a lot of clubs will look at Burnley with a bit of envy, the fact that they've had such a successful season by playing football the right way, but also not just doing it as a bankroll as well. And there's plenty of teams you can point to have come down and it's not worked, and teams that have thrown money at it and it's not worked, or even hired big name managers and it's not worked. So I think it's refreshing to see that. I mean, one of the best teams I think I've seen in the Championship. So yeah, more than happy for Burnley to go up if that's what happens. More than likely it will do, and it's just we'll watch with interest to see how this team and company attack the Premier League, because again, it's a completely different way of doing it. Like you say, you're no longer the Man Cities, you are the Burnleys. Do you know what I mean? The Southamptons, and how that works will be interesting. So I think we'll see what happens next year.
Yeah, I think a lot of Burnley fans will like that answer. That's very well said. If I do say so myself. But I was at that game the first day of the season. I remember turning to my friends after about 10, 15 minutes, like you were saying, I'm like, we're actually keeping the ball. Our fullbacks are inverted. Like they're going into the centre when we don't have the ball, or when we do have the, I just don't understand what's going on. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. But I knew that I didn't know we were going to do this well, but I knew then that this is going to be a decent season. And of course, I think in that game, we got the win. Probably should have had a penalty, but I'm over it. But I remember thinking like,
it should be by now.
And I remember at the time thinking like, we're decent, but we still looked a little bit rough around the edges. And then we had a bit of a slow start after that, drawing 2 minute games, losing at Watford. But then, we really have come into his own since, and it's been an absolutely fantastic season. Just before I get predictions and stuff, for the game, I want to get your predictions on your season. Obviously, the main aim now has got to be staying up at this stage of the season. Just looking at the league table now, you do have a game in hand on Cardiff, who are 1 place above you, but they are 4 points ahead of you, and they've won their last 2 games as well. Beneath you is Blackpool and Wigan. Then you've got Rotherham 5 points ahead of you. Birmingham 7 points ahead of you, then QPR 8 points. Are you thinking you can stop up, or are you looking at that table and think it's a little bit too much?
I think there's every chance. Our game in hand's against Bristol, so it's a game you can get points out of. Like I say, it's a game in hand against Burnley. You may as well write it off. So it's a winnable game, that game in hand. I think it's a bit of a shame that results have probably gone against as well. Cardiff have won back to back. Wigan got to win. So that's not helped. That's why I'm saying I don't think we can write any game off. Every game now we're going to try and get points out of. I think Warnock just provide a bit of potential factor to do that. But then the run of games that we've got, I think we've got one of the toughest fixture lists now going into the end of the season. We play a lot of the top 9, top 10. But there's every chance that we play teams that either have qualified for playoffs and are resting, or the mid-table teams that we play might have thought, well, they're out of the playoffs and therefore it's done. Like Sheffield United, they might be up, they might not, because Borough are hot on their heels. But I think it's going to be tough. It's going to take something which is going to be remembered for a long, long time if we do it. It will be a great escape if we do. So I think, like I said, the bookies have got us right down there, right up there as favourites to go down, and they're inevitably not often wrong. So it will take something quite extreme to get us out of that. But we can do it. Like I say, weirder things happen. It's Championship. Anyone can beat anyone. And I think we've probably got the best manager to try and get us out of that with the games he's got and the little amount of time he's got. So fingers crossed. But if anything you could do for us on Saturday, I mean, we need the points more than you. So
Yeah, we are running away with it slightly, but we're all looking ahead to the Blackburn game and thinking, let's try and get promotion secured when we play Blackburn, potentially in March, but we don't really know when that game's going to be now, thanks to the FA Cup quarterfinals, if we beat Fleetwood. Let's not get ahead of ourselves on that. Excuse me. I do hope we stop up. I'm just looking at that relegation places now. Even though we've got this Lancashire rivalry with Blackpool, and we're supposed to have this sort of like Yorkshire-Lancashire rivalry with any team in Yorkshire, really. I don't like the look of that relegation places. I want all three of them teams to stop up because they're all close games. Not that we'll be in this league next season, but for me, you can send Cardiff, Birmingham, and QPR down. Send them three down because they're all miles away. So I do hope you stop up. Anyway, thoughts on the actual game, like predictions then. I'll go first. I do think Warnock will turn it into a slog. I think some Burnley fans are looking at this and thinking 3-4-0. And as I've said, under Fotheringham, maybe. I think a professional 2-0 sort of job rather than a running away with it 3-4-0 sort of job. I think you'll frustrate us for the first half an hour, maybe even 45 minutes, as teams like Blackburn have done, who've come to the turf and been 0-0 at half time, but then the second half we've been much better and put the team to the sword. I think that's what we'll do. I think you'll frustrate us for 45 minutes. Company will do his standard company rollicking at half time, change things around a little bit, and then hopefully we'll I just think we've got the better players, and that's ultimately what will see us over the line, and then we'll win 2-0 in the second half. What's your thoughts on the game, prediction wise?
Yeah, I mean, if I was answering my heart, I'd probably say 1-1. But in my head, I'd probably reckon, like, say, a late goal. Do you know what I mean? Maybe late 2 goals, 80th minute, 87th minute, something like that. I just think we'll work hard, we'll try. We might get something out of the game, we might get a goal, but it's whether we can keep you out for that long with the quality players you've got, like Zahora and Taylor, the pace and the trickery that they've got. I think tired legs might start to show. But then you play midweek and we didn't, so there's every chance there. Yeah, heart would say a 1-1, but if you asked me to put money on it, I'd probably say a 2-0 Burnley, both goals in the second half.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. Well, that's it. We'll start wrapping up. Thank you for coming on the show, mate. It's been a pleasure.
No, more than happy. Thank you.
Yeah, and just before we do go, do you want to let everyone know where they can find you and where they can find your podcast, YouTube channel, Facebook page, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so Twitter or we've got YouTube channel as well. It's Andy Takes That Chance, which is named after the commentary when we went up against Reading in 2017. But yeah, we do preview shows for each game, which I think you might have been on ours. And then obviously review on a Sunday evening around 8:30. But yeah, Andy Takes That Chance, Twitter and YouTube.
Yeah, well, if you want to go and check out some Huddersfield content, especially the one that I was on, then please feel free to do so just by following the advice there. But as I said earlier, thank you for being on the show, mate. It's been a pleasure. Good luck for the rest of the season, just after Saturday.